Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome each of you to our weekly gathering, but this week it's a very special gathering because we're going to be celebrating the work and the effect of the presence of Dr. Lee H. Butler um, in the CTS community for the past more than 2 decades. As our announcement said that we circulated publicly last week, Dr. Butler will be joining Phillips Theological Seminary in the role of VP of Academic Affairs and Academic Dean. So celebrate that wonderful recognition of his leadership, as well as the recognition of his multiple gifts that he brings to theological education. So while it is with a bit of sadness that we have this celebration today, it is also with a tremendous amount of joy that Dr. Butler will be able to bring these gifts to a larger audience. Now, I want to take just a moment, if I could, before I turn this over to Lisa Zook, who'll do some housekeeping, to just others will talk about the work of Dr. Butler in terms of the fields in which he works, as well as in terms of his impact on the seminary. But I would just like to take a moment to do two things. One is to contextualize his work as a distinguished service professor of pastoral theology here at the seminary, and to begin to speak how he affects the larger field in which he operates. One of the things that many people know, but others don't, is that he's been a pioneer in shaping the fields of pastoral theology and practical theology to both benefit from the genius of African diasporan cultures and therapeutic practices, as well as a force to demand that these fields respond to the particular needs of Black communities. One cannot understand fully the field of pastoral theology as it is unfolded in the last 2 decades without taking measure of the significant way that Dr. Lee Butler has been a part of that. Now, what this has meant for CTS is that we've become a center of excellence in these fields and in the critical growth of Africana studies and theological education more generally. Dr. Butler's own work and that of his students bears this out and has significantly shaped the field. Additionally, Dr. Butler was the founding director of the Center for Black Faith and Life at CTS when it was founded from 2007 to 2010 when he was the founding director. As many of you know, this is one of the most important centers that we have here at the seminary. And I just want to close on another note. Dr. Butler was also the president of the Society for the Study of Black Religion from 2007 to 2012. And I have certainly been a beneficiary of his leadership during the time that he was president. I served as his executive director, and I learned so much from him, and our society benefited tremendously in a real and significant way. The work in terms of supporting an entire generation of Black scholars, in terms of mentoring, as well as in terms of providing opportunity, was connected to his work as the president of for the Study of Black Religion. And I did not want that to go unnoticed. So as I turn it over to Lisa Zook, I want to invite you all to come with full hearts and to come with open arms as we celebrate in great joy all of the things that the presence of Dr. Lee H. Butler has meant to us for the last 24 years, as we take this opportunity to celebrate and send him to the new fields of work with our love, our encouragement, and our deep gratitude. Lisa?
Thank you, President Ray. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Zook, and it's so good to see so many of you here. These Wednesday gatherings have become quite a marking point in my week. It's good to see so many familiar faces, and I'm especially happy to be here with you today in this time of Thanksgiving and tribute for Professor Butler. So good to see so many of my fellow alums who studied with me under Dr. Butler's tutelage, not that very much long ago. So in order that this time of celebration for Dr. Butler can be appreciated by all, I'm just gonna share a couple of best tips for Zoom. So the most important thing for us all to remember is, unless you're speaking, please keep your microphone muted. That prevents background noise from corrupting the sound. And so we want to be able to hear the words that everyone has to say and hear words from Dr. Butler himself. So please remember to keep yourselves muted. There will be a time for the community to offer words of thanksgiving for him and celebration for him. So you will have an opportunity to speak. You can also share your thoughts by using the chat. So there's a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. And if you click on that, a chat feature will open on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see people are already sharing messages with one another. So feel free throughout this time to use that chat feature. And I think those are my main things. Use the chat and keep yourselves muted unless you're speaking. So again, welcome. I'm happy to see so many of you. President Ray.
Yes, I would now like to invite Mr. Norman Williams, who was a longtime member of our Board of Trustees and for many years the chair of the board. And I would like for him to come and bring remarks of appreciation for the work and presence of Dr. Butler from the perspective of the Board of Trustees of CTS.
Okay. Lisa's on it. She took me off mute and I didn't even have to do anything. Lee and I have been friends for a very long time. I've known him as just about everything but a student, which gives me an interesting perspective because I did not experience the fear and trembling that other students did, because Lee can be a little intense if you don't know. Even my mother, who was what would be considered an elder in Lee's world, had fear and trembling when it came to making sure that her papers were written well and that she was prepared for class. Lee was expecting excellence of himself and everyone that he was engaged with. Even my wife, who was working on finishing her dissertation, and Lee offered to help and just sit on her committee. And I don't know if she really wants me to say this, but I just have to. Lee, she was scared of you. Even though you were very much supportive and pastoral and encouraging, she was still a little scared of you. And her degree wasn't in theology. So as a trustee, to say that Lee Butler is an extraordinary mind doesn't really sum up a guy with 3 master's degrees, PhD, 3 books that I know of, 4 more that are in progress, 20 articles, 16 professional papers, unknown numbers of lectures and international lectures. To say that we are proud of his 25 years at CTS is an understatement. Clearly, there's been a lot that has been going on, and we've been the beneficiaries of his energy, his wit, his vision, his commitment to academic excellence, his deep abiding faith in God and in all of us, and especially in the role that theology has in the world and the discipline to do the work right and to do it well. Among his many gifts that he brought to CTS, and one that might go unnoticed, is the many years he was willing to stay at CTS. You know, African-American men have not lasted long at CTS. And one of the things that may go unnoticed is this was one who shared himself with us. We are not perfect, and we're not immune as an institution to bias or racism. A true friend stays with you, and you learn together, and you learn about each other, and you challenge each other. In order for Lee to bring the gifts that he brought to our community, he made sacrifices, and he had to compete with the challenges that we remember we experienced in this last decade, for example, challenges that brought us to the home that we're in right now. A cherished moment in that sharing is a conversation. That's how it was presented. It was just a conversation between Lee Butler and Laurel Snyder. I, for one, was expected an intense debate. They were two rather strong intellects, but what we received from each of them was a gift. It was a gift of themselves. It was the courage to express their raw feelings and their developing affection for each other and each other's work and each other's commitment and love for the art of teaching. It was a moment I'll long remember because Lee doesn't often show his tender side. I mean, it's just not his thing. I dare say many students were intimately affected by that fullness of just a conversation and how conversations, though intense, can be very meaningful and can be very instructive and can have a lasting effect. We as trustees are proud of all of our faculty. We would say that every one of our faculty members are brilliant, and we bask as if we had something to do with their accomplishments. And yet we know that it's their sweat and it's their work and it's their heartache that brings about the very things that we take credit for as trustees of CTS. But nonetheless, as much as we're proud of all, we're especially proud of Lee. As a member of the faculty who sat with trustees in our meetings, I had the privilege of being confidant to Lee and confidant to the president's predecessor, Alice, and confidant to my predecessor as chair of the board of trustees, Don. And sometimes that meant, because Lee had to push to create the things that he is credited for creating. And it was not always an easy push. It was a push that required Lee to educate and to negotiate. And sometimes the two don't always work well, but he made them work well. We're deeply moved that we are going to be losing a real talent, a treasure, so to speak. And I want, having brought up the relationship that I had with both Don Clark and Alice, I want to share with all of you, and especially you, Lee, what some of the things that each of these individuals shared with me. Don said to me that Professor Butler was always an engaged advocate of CTS's mission and supportive colleague to me during our shared time at the seminary. He went on a friend-raising trip with me to a suburban congregation. He advanced Black faith and life initiatives, and he counseled me at a time of institutional challenge. Lee is well prepared as a leader for the next in his new endeavor, and I wish him only the very best. Alice knows me, so I'm hoping I did what she said I would do. She said, speak of his dedication to the highest ideas of theological education, his tenacious will to help us all avoid platitudes, his wicked sense of humor that you may only see after taking decades to get to know him, his fine culinary sensibilities, his high expectations for everyone, including himself, his willingness to hold feet to the fire, even and perhaps especially friends. As I close, I'm reminded of a conversation that I had with my cousin. It was the closest thing I had to a brother when I was leaving Chicago to go away to college. He said, you have a chance to be a new you. Everyone who knows the old you won't be coming with you. You can take the very best of yourself and try new things. You can be you, your own way. Hold memories in the background and not be governed by them. And that was his way of saying college would be a new universe for me to explore. Lee, You are going to a new universe to explore. Be the very best new you. Try new things. Take the memory of us with you, but be not limited by past memories, whether they're good or wish they could have been better. Do this in order that your roots may grow deep in new earth and will bear fruit as you stretch your hands to a new sky.
Thank you, Norman, for those words, for the sentiment, and for the expressions of joy and gratitude that you bring. I'd now like to ask Ayana Garrett if she would speak a bit on behalf. So I'd like to invite her to speak now.
Okay. There's an African proverb that says, when deeds speak, words are nothing. Dr. Butler, your deeds have outspoken any words that can be mentioned here today. Yes, it goes without saying that you are an incredibly gifted scholar and practitioner. But more than that, you have been an excellent person and child of God to the CTS community. When I asked the staff to describe you, they had these words to say about you. Lee is a friend. He is a non-anxious presence, a stabilizing force. Lee is a counselor, a pastor. Lee is wise, classy, and kind-hearted. Lee is deep. He's gentle, diplomatic, a man of integrity, and one who wants the very best for you. Yes, he is. Lee, whether you were there for us in the loss of a loved one, whether you provided a listening ear with great wisdom when we so desperately needed you, whether you sat with us in silence, whether you invited us to your home for a fellowship or talked to us during lunch about your favorite pastime, fishing. One thing is for sure, you were more than just a coworker, and your deeds have spoken volumes towards us. For many years, one of the highlights to a student's experience at CTS has been the hand washing and blessing service that you perform. And so, as you have blessed so many others, I'd like to bless you and bless your hands. So if you would, please, would you raise your hands for us? As you approach your new journey at Phillips Theological Seminary, may the presence of God be with you to establish the works of your hands. May the works of your hands serve to bring empowerment, wisdom, knowledge, healing, and peace to all the people that you touch. May God bless you and prosper you and keep you. And know that as God and as the ancestors go with you, the CTS staff goes with you as well. We go praying with you, rooting for you, praying for your family and your success. God bless you and go in peace.
Ashe, thank you for that, Ayana. Before turning to our time with Dr. Butler and hearing his words and guidance, I would like to ask Dr. Zachary Moon to bring reflections on behalf of the faculty and words of appreciation. And I would like to do that because it seems fitting and appropriate, because one of the lasting legacies of Dr. Butler will be the presence of Dr. Moon on our faculty. We have been tremendously benefited from that, and I'm sure we will be for decades to come. So he will be an embodiment of all that you've done for CTS and all of the ways that it unfolds in fields and expressions we could not have imagined. So I'm going to invite Dr. Moon now to bring words of appreciation for the faculty. And after that, we will hear from Dr. Butler.
Thank you, President Ray. I won't actually try to speak on behalf of the faculty so much. We have an opportunity in a little while to share our hearts with you, Lee, as you make this transition. So I'll just do my best tenderly to speak my heart. When I first met Dr. Butler, it was in his Introduction to Pastoral Care class. And it was immediately impressed upon me that this was not a space or an instructor to be trifled with. And others have described an intensity or an intimidation or a fear, and I would not describe Lee Butler this way. In my experience, what he asked without words of each of us in that classroom was to bring the best of ourselves, to take ourselves seriously and sincerely to the task of our own learning and to the responsibility of our call. And you felt that just with him putting his eyes on you. He called that forth without words at all, just in the way that he was with us in that space. Some years later, when I was serving in the military, I came to be familiar with a word called bearing. The military calls this bearing. And I realized that Lee Butler was my first instructor of bearing. And I don't know if he ever used that word, but bearing was like, you better say what you have to say in your body all the time, in the steps that you take, in the way that you hold yourself. And I believe that message for his students was a message that was deeply held in a place of faithful belief for Dr. Butler. That he offered us that invitation, not because of his own sort of personal disposition, but because he deeply believed that God wished us to be our truest and most authentic form of the way in which we were created by the Creator. And so in that way, that classroom space was a sacred space. It was a sanctuary space. It was not always a calm or peaceful space, but Dr. Butler had a way of letting us know that that was okay. It was okay for us to feel tension, for us to feel uncertainty, because we would find those things in the ministries that we were called to do. And so if we felt uncomfortable, if we felt like we didn't have all the answers, Dr. Butler was quick to acknowledge and affirm that all the way down to the taproot. And that was the first and a continued blessing for me as his student. I'll say, just from a faculty position, Dr. Butler, you and I have talked over the last few years about the giants of our faculty, some of who have retired recently in this last 4 or 5 years, and the imprint that they left on this institution. how sometimes it feels like their spirits are lingering in conversations and work that we're about doing. And I realize as you make this transition to this new opportunity, you are going to be a spirit that lingers in our work, in our conversations, in all that we do. That there will be those moments as the faculty convene to consider a weighty decision, that we will all be attentive and open, anticipating that this would be the time that Dr. Butler would have something that would be helpful for us in this process. And we will look around and we will miss you so dearly in that moment. And we will do our best to go on anyhow. I don't think there is any space, any program, anything that we do at Chicago Theological Seminary that doesn't have your fingerprints on it. The way in which you work and the presence that you have in this space has deeply touched and shaped and influenced this institution from the top of its head to the tip of its toes. And that will be your legacy. And myself, and I think everyone else who knows you well, will continue to do our best to be disciplined and faithful to the hope and the faith that you have in us and what we can do in this space. As I look at the many faces who are here to hold this moment with you, Dr. Butler, and I sense that you've probably been looking around at these faces too. It's overwhelming for me. So to just see so many of your students, past and present, to see your faculty and staff colleagues at CTS, past and present, to see your peers in the field of theological education, pastoral theology in particular. All of us have been touched by you, have been strengthened by you, been challenged by you, are grateful that God has given you into this time and in this place that we would be blessed. And we are blessed. And we will continue to be blessed, because even though you think you're headed out the door, the way in which we're connected to you will remain. And we're grateful for that. Thank you.
Dr. Butler.
Thank you, President Ray, and everyone who has spoken to this moment. It is an overwhelming moment. And as Mr. Williams has noted, sometimes I show deep emotion, and this was one of those moments. So I hope that I will be able to get through this reflection, and thank goodness they are written. In the fall semester of 1995, while I was serving on the faculty of Lancaster Theological Seminary, Dean David Greenhall recommended and nominated me to the CTS Dean, William Myers, who was chairing a search for a professor of pastoral care. That was the precipitating event that initiated my application to Chicago Theological Seminary. My entire life to that point had been lived in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So imagining the Midwest was a new thought for me. In January of 1996, as I stepped onto the CTS campus for the first time, I truly experienced cold weather for the first time in my life. I grew up in central Pennsylvania and was well acquainted with snow, but Chicago's January deep freeze expanded my experiential definition of winter. On a typical day in Chicago, January 1996, I interviewed as a finalist for a tenure-track position in pastoral care. I was housed at the University of Chicago Quadrangle Club on 57th near Woodlawn. My long day of interviews began with a 7 a.m. breakfast with students at Salonica Restaurant. I donned myself in one of my fine Italian suits and put on a pair of leather shoes with leather soles. Now, when the student, who I think was Phil Hobson, met me in the lobby of the Quad Club, the shoes on my feet were supple and comfortable. After a few steps outside, I experienced something I had never experienced before. My shoes froze and they ceased to be supple. So for those 6 blocks between the Quad Club and Salonica, I walked as though I had 2x4s strapped to my feet. Can you imagine? With that morning, as part of my introductory experience to Chicago Theological Seminary, my acceptance of the invitation to join CTS, to join the faculty, was truly responding faithfully to the call of God. My life as a CTS scholar teacher has been punctuated by a deep commitment to maintain both the Boyson legacy of integrating theology and psychology and the social justice heritage of forming religious leaders to do justice, love mercy, stand boldly on behalf of the least, the lost, the lonely, the rejected, degraded, demoralized, and dehumanized. During the 150th anniversary celebration of CTS, Dean W. Dow Edgerton described a litany of first with the refrain, CTS makes new history. Throughout my tenure at CTS, I have been a history maker, helping CTS to develop a new narrative about itself. Some of those things you've heard recounted by President Ray in his opening statement. A new institutional history has been made so that others might receive extravagant welcome from CTS. So here we are today, 24 years after my walk in frozen shoes, and God has called again for me to journey to a land I do not know. Rather than being directed like Abram, I was like Simon and his brother Andrew. They were busy at work fishing when Jesus was walking by. He stopped, called to them, and said, "Follow me." They immediately left what they were doing, fishing, and followed him. In mid-May of 2020, Phillips Theological Seminary was walking around the country. Then they approached me and said, "I know your scholarship. Your former students speak very highly of you. Your colleagues esteem you. You don't have to apply. Just say yes, and you will be our next Vice President of Academic Affairs and Academic Dean. This experience was novel. It was as novel as my frozen leather shoes. I asked God, if you want me to go to Tulsa, you need to give me a sign. Bigger than the ones you've already shown me by them approaching me. And the sign came. As many of you know, my mentor, Dr. Charles Long, the preeminent scholar in the history of religions, passed in February. As Phillips president, Nancy Pittman, presented me with the details of the offer, she said, I want to give you an endowed chair. I have 3, and the one I want to give you is the History of Religions chair. My response was to say, that would honor my mentor. I'm going to Phillips Theological Seminary, not because I sought them, but because the Spirit directed them to seek me. As I journey to my new context of ministry, leaving behind the work I was doing here at Chicago Theological Seminary, know that I carry within me the CTS ethos of social justice and the passion for empowering transformation. This is an exciting time to be in theological education and to be a theological educator. As I uproot, I bless you, CTS. All good to you, and take good care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Butler. While we certainly have opportunity to each give our own words, I would like to ask all of you to just raise your hands in a blessing. Raise your hands in a blessing so that we might bless the one who has been in our midst, who has made us much of who we are. That we bless him, that as he goes forward, all of the charism, all of the genius, all of the hope, and all of the vision that he has shown us, he will take to a new place. He will take to a new place in a way that will reshape and reform them in these dynamic times in which we live. We pour out our hearts to you, Lee H. Butler Jr. We give you our blessing and we give you our care. And most of all, we give God thanks that you did not consider it robbery to pour yourself and your heart into this place with these people in this work. We pray you strength and courage. We pray you hope for a stout heart and a clear eye of vision. Please accept our gift of love and all of the care that we give to you. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe.
I would like to now invite Mark Winters to speak on behalf of the alums. Mark Winters, as you know, is an alum of the seminary and serves on our board of trustees. So he's going to bring a few words on behalf of the alums of the seminary. Mark?
Thank you, President Ray, and this is a humble honor for me to try to name some reflections here. I want to encourage everyone to read the chat. There are some incredible tributes in there as well. As an alum of an institution like CTS, my life in ministry has been profoundly influenced by the many wonderful teachers I had there, each for their own reasons. Lee Butler is probably the most thoughtful person I know. I'm not just saying that because of how much time he likes to take before responding to our questions in class. He is a deeply wise person. His careful answers to our questions reflect not just the scholarly and historic, but also the relational and emotional aspects of whatever it is that he's talking about. Dr. Butler taught me that grief is not about stages, it's about tasks. He showed us how to read Psalm 137 through the eyes of a teenager, because being a teenager often feels like one is in exile, and now that I have one, I know more clearly what he means. He taught me how to read scripture deeply and faithfully, and to take one's time thinking about what it might mean. I took Practice of Christian Ministry from Dr. Butler as well, a class in which Zachary Moon also sat as a lowly master's student. I remember the role plays when Dr. Butler would split us up into 3 groups and give us precious little instruction upon which to act. One night early on, he told the 3 groups we were representing God, humanity, and the enemy. The ensuing activity included a lot of seminarian overthinking. But as we processed afterwards what happened, we learned about the perilous distance between what we say we believe about God and how we actually act when given the chance. Since my time in his classroom, I've sought his advice on a few occasions, particularly those times when I needed his level of thoughtfulness on a complex issue. But Lee's thoughtfulness is also revealed in those questions he doesn't answer. He never returned papers or explained where our grades came from. It's because Lee Butler knows he's teaching pastors. Dr. Butler wanted to not just build our faith in God, but our faith in ourselves as well. He taught me not only how important my calling is, but how to trust in my own capacity to do it. The gratitude and respect I have for Lee Butler are immeasurable. I will dearly miss his presence in Chicago, especially running into him accidentally at Red Robin. But God has blessed me for having known you, Lee, and I pray God's blessing upon you always. Thank you.
We will take a few moments now, about the next 10, 15 minutes for community expressions of appreciation for all that Dr. Butler has meant to each and every one of us in the many ways that we have encountered him in our lives. So I'd like to open this time by recognizing one of his colleagues who is certainly a part of the generation that he helped to shape with his powerful work. So Dr. Stephanie Crumpton, why don't you start our time together, and then we will just move throughout the gathered audience here for reflections and for expressions of gratitude.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ray. Dr. Butler, I had the gift of being introduced to Dr. Butler during my first year of doctoral work when I was at Columbia Seminary, and I am profoundly grateful. One of the most important things that he taught me was the importance of asking the question, to whom am I accountable in my work? To whom am I speaking? And the importance of dialogue partners who are resonant yet still challenging. Who do I come from? Where am I headed? And why am I doing this work? Have got to be some of the most important questions that he has prompted me to ask and to respond to in my research and writing. And I think out of that, he has taught me how to find my way home in my work, oftentimes while I'm navigating environments that would deny anyone a home. And he has also impressed upon me the importance of not only making sure I knew how to find my way home, but also showing the roadmap to others so that they too could chart their own pathways, a true north for themselves, but a true north that also pointed out roads of freedom, liberation, joy, love, and truth-telling to help them also do the same. And that is one of the most profound impacts that he has on my work as a scholar, a teacher, and a pastoral care provider. So I am very grateful to Dr. Lee Butler, even though we have had times where there's a joke between the two of us about how he came down on me so hard during exams because I was refusing to pay attention to something that I had to resort to rocking back and forth on my exercise buckle. But I am grateful for those moments because it meant that he cared. And he's also always been there. And so for that, Dr. Butler, please know that I am part of a generation of people who are so grateful for your gifts to us, that you help us find our way home and encourage others to do the same. I wish you the very best in Tulsa. They're not ready for you. The whole city's not ready, but they'll be okay. God bless you.
Okay, so it's an open mic, so you can just unmute yourself. And as I said, we'll go now for about another 10 minutes or so.
My name is Lori Taylor, and I just wanted to say to you, I don't think I've ever adequately thanked you for being the advisor to ASO. I do know that ASO actively sought out African-American professors, and which is probably why Dean Myers approached you. And I'm so grateful that he did. I think I was there, you were there for maybe a year before I got there. And when I became ASO chair, you were such a gracious advisor. And thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your family. When Mary was expecting, you allowed us to be a part of the shower at the seminary, and part of Abia's life for the stretch of it. And thank you for opening your home and just being the instructor that you have been and the advisor that you have been for me, especially. So thank you for listening and being patient. And we're gonna miss you. You're gonna be greatly missed.
Tim Wright, may I speak for a moment? Dr. Butler, you talked about the journey to Tulsa and that they had to show you a sign. And I remember my journey to CTS and they had to show me a sign. I remember calling the school just to kind of check it out in 2013. And I talked to one of the receptionists there. And I asked her about the school. She says, wait a minute, let me put somebody else on the line. And she transferred me to a Dr. Lee Butler, who I spoke to, and I asked about the school. But yet you asked about me and why that I want to come to CTS and to the seminary. And we had that discussion. And I took that in. And I remember maybe a couple of months later that I decided to come up to CTS just to take a look at the school. And they told me that there was a luncheon upstairs and that I could come if I wanted to. So I showed up. And there was only one seat left at this luncheon up in the lunchroom. And I went and I took the seat and I introduced myself, and you were sitting next to me. You says, hi, I'm Dr. Butler. And I said, wow, that's a coincidence. And so we talked. And I remember once I decided to come to the school, well, actually, I remember trying to figure out who Dr. Butler was. And I looked at your background and I saw that you went to Bucknell. One of my law classmates also went to Bucknell. And so I gave him a call and I asked him if he knew who this guy was, Dr. Butler, Lee Butler. And he says, oh, Preach? Yeah, we know Preach. I raised Preach. And so I said, wow. And so anyway, I go to CTS. And who becomes my advisor? But Dr. Butler. So God certainly gave me a sign. And he continues to give me those signs. I wish you well in your travels, Dr. Butler. And when you find a good fishing hole, I need you to call me so we can get together and go fishing. Thank you, sir. Love you much. God bless.
Hello, Lee Butler. This is Edward and Sharon. You spoke at our wedding. You preached the sermon, my farewell sermon, as I was leaving to become conference minister in the United Church of Christ. And one of the things that you shared with me was that at that service was to farewell. Farewell in the position that you will occupy. Farewell with the community and the people that you will embrace. Farewell. And also you shared with me, because when I came to seminary, I was an MBA, I was a student of business. But you helped me to understand that my gifts will make room for me in ministry. That my call was to be the physical representation of Christ among the people. I am because of you. And I want to just to say to you and your family, farewell. Farewell. Farewell.
Hello, my brother Lee. This is Damon. I just wanted to give you thanks for all that you have done for not only me and my life, but my wife, and that my family is your family and your family is my family. I thank you for helping me to transition from the MA to the MDiv. And I thank you for, you know, as someone said earlier, you always show up when we need you. And that's from helping me through a difficult time when I had to leave a church, being called to a church, and helping me along my journey in various ways. And so I just want to reach out to you and give you thanks for my favorite classes I wrote on the chat, Psychodynamics of the Biblical Narrative, where you allowed me to have story time every class with whatever those insights God gave me to help see the biblical text in a different way. And so grace and mercy for your journey. And I will come visit in Tulsa so that we can have a conversation, a nice drink, and exchange the stories and what you're learning down there, and to continue to help me to learn about the great history that you'll experience in Tulsa. Blessings, my brother.
Hello, Lee. This is Catherine Beatty speaking. Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, and the waving wheat can sure smell sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain. Lee, I was there to welcome you to CTS back in 1996. I was there in one of the first classes that you taught at CTS. So it is only fitting that I welcome you to CTS and to be here to say goodbye to you from CTS. Take care and farewell.
Reverend Dr. Butler, I think, added additional things into his work and contributions that should be mentioned. Among them are that he added psychology into pastoral studies, into Africana studies, and into ministry itself. He was a pioneer in that, and he continues to pioneer that and move it forward. He was among the first to make clear the distinction between religion, theology, and spirituality. He also has pioneered interdisciplinary work between all of those fields, with Africana studies at the top, and his Africana studies include experience and relationships in Africa as well as in America. He is supportive. I don't know if this is my turn or not, but I'll continue unless you tell me it's not my turn. He is a great mentor. He argues well and respectfully. He also at CDS often interceded in institutional difficulties, and he smoothed them over and helped all parties to understand each other. And in that way and many others was instrumental in moving the institution forward. Speaker before mentioned his will. His will is always centered in his theology, and he always uses it for healing, for knowledge, and for good. And I have no doubt that Tulsa and that region and his new positions need him and are hungry for his presence and for what he's able to teach. Thank you, Dr. Butler, and best wishes to you and your family.
So, Dr. Butler, my dear friend Lee, as we prepare to close our timeout, I was pondering as you were talking about God showing you a sign as to whether or not that you should be. And one of the things that I was thinking is, and the question it raised for me is, what does God need for you there? What does God need you to be there for? Because, you know, I'm an old dyed-in-the-wool Calvinist, so I believe that God puts people in places that they need to be. You, sir, are going to be taking this role, this position, as that place prepares to remember one of the most grievous and one of the most horrible pages in the history of this nation. And that is, of course, the Tulsa race riot that destroyed the Black community in Tulsa. So that will be coming up in 2021. And one of that you know far better than I from our African ancestors is that those who leave us, particularly violently, are never gone. Those who are taken away have never taken their leave in peace. So in the midst of the tumult and turmoil that we're going through now as a society, how much more so will that be in Tulsa in 2021? So I want to lift that up because I think that one of the things that as we send you forth with our blessings and with our love, we send you forth not just in gratitude for what you've done here, but we send you forth with gratitude that you have accepted the call that God has called you to a place that is going to be sorely in need of a shaman, a place that is going to be surely and sorely in need of a medicine man, a place that is going to be sorely in need of someone who can take the trauma and hurt of a history denied for so long, but still echoing as loud as a thunderstorm, and be able to find a slither of hope and be able to find a promise of a sunrise tomorrow. So as you go to Tulsa, as you go to Phillips, I appreciate the fact that God has used Phillips as the instrument of your journey. But I also want to give deep gratitude that God will use you as an instrument in that place for a time in which I have no doubt there will be much need of healing and hope because of the deep history of trauma that will take on a life of its own in the next year. So I just wanted to lift that up because I'm very, very happy about your position as the VP of Academic Affairs. I am very happy about you becoming the dean because, as you know, with our work with SSBR and our work just in the academy in general, I have the utmost respect, and you have been a leader for me. But in terms of the unfolding of human history, in terms of the unfolding of the history of Black people, you will be going into a place in a time and suited in such a way that there is work that you could do there, that there are few people walking the face of this earth will be able to do. And I simply give God thanks that we are able to send you with our blessings and we're able to send you with our love, so that in those dark moments, in those moments of challenge, in those moments where the trauma of that place seems that it will overwhelm the people, that our love and care for you will be the strength that will keep you from being overwhelmed. That our love and hope for you will be the strength that you will find even when the place that you're going doesn't know it has the strength. That all that we give unto you today will help you as you lead them in finding their courage to build a brighter tomorrow from a dark and regretful history. So I just wanted to say words as we send you forth, because we not only want to appreciate you, but we want you to know that you go forth with all of our prayers, with all of our hopes, and with deep gratitude for God, allowing you to be in that place in particular, at this time in particular, as a symbol of hope and promise of what tomorrow might bring. So thank you, Dr. Lee H. Butler, Jr. And as you go forth with our blessings and our love. Ashe. Thank you, friends. We are going to close our time now. And I would like to invite you to join us next week again when Dr. Stephanie Crowder will be leading our time of reflection. But I want to extend a particular thanks to all of you who've come to share this time when we could show our appreciation, show our love, and also give our encouragement to the dear one that God has held in our midst for 24 years, but now sends to another place as a beacon of hope and light in terms of a future that might be in a world that is sometimes not what we would hope it would be. So thank you, friends, and blessings to you all.
We love you, Dr. Butler.
Congratulations.
God bless you, Lee. Peace.
Love you, Dr. Butler.
Butler. God bless you, Dr. Butler.
God bless you.
Blessings,
God bless
Dr.
you.
Butler. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for always stretching me.
Amen.
Blessings on you, Dr. Butler.
Assalamu
Love
alaikum,
you,
Dr. Butler.
Love you, Dr. Butler.
Take care, Dr. Butler.
Blessings.